I'm going to talk a little bit about my development as a jazz musician, of which I owe a large part to the great British jazz guitarist Martin Taylor. It all started in 1989 while I was at college, and somebody gave me a cassette of Sarabanda, and it was a mix of band recordings and solo guitar pieces. And two of the solo guitar pieces that intrigued me were They Can't Take That Away From Me and I Remember Clifford. I fell in love with these renditions the moment I heard them. I listened to the cassette and, you know, some people say that they have these life-changing experiences in connection with music, and that was one of them. That was quite significant. It was, I just couldn't believe that you could do all these things on the guitar, that one person could make the guitar sound like that. First of all, the harmony, Taylor's concept of harmony, the way he reharmonized these standards, was so inventive and fresh. The technique, the fact that he was playing the chords, the melodies and the bass lines at the same time was just phenomenal. Now, at the time, I knew I liked jazz, but most of the jazz I listened to, which was not very much, to be honest, I couldn't understand. I couldn't grasp. It seemed beyond my understanding at that time. However, I'd been playing classical guitar for many years. I'd been doing my grades and, solo guitar where you're playing bass lines and melodies at the same time wasn't so unusual. I'd hear jazz ensembles, you had the standard drums, upright bass, piano, and horns, brass instruments, but I just couldn't understand it. And then when I heard Sarabanda and Martin Taylor's interpretation of these standards, I think it was because it was solo guitar, and I saw a way in because it was one instrument. I only had to consider one instrument. So I learned these pieces. I learned them from the cassette, simply by pressing play, stop, listening, playing the couple of seconds of music, then going back to double check, playing along, and bit by bit by bit. So the tape recorder that I had got a lot of action, and after a while buttons started to come off, and it was just ridiculous. You have to remember that back in 1988, as I mentioned in my other video about the Cannonball Adderley solo and learning jazz fusion guitar solos, that it wasn't until 1990, 91 that I got hold of the Rock and Play, where I could finally slow things down, because it gave you that half speed facility. Before that, I didn't have enough money to go buying anything sort of elaborate. I just had to use the tape recorder that I had, and it had these really chunky buttons, horrible chunky buttons. It wasn't delicate, it's like just noisy buttons going ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It just drive my nan nuts. And eventually the rewind button just fell off, so I had to press the rewind button internally, you know. But anyway, I learned the piece and I could play it, and I was really chuffed for myself that I could play it, bearing in mind, although I had the technique to play the piece, I had no understanding of what I was doing, no idea. But it became my party piece, and I used to play it to all my friends, my musician friends, and they used to go, wow, that's amazing, you know, and I would really impress them. It was a party piece because that's all I could do. And I played it, you know, everywhere I went, I would play it. And a couple of times I got caught out, you know. I would play it in front of jazz musicians and they said, oh, do you know this tune? And we'd start playing and I didn't have a clue. And that made me feel a little bit inadequate. There's no better way to build your character and to progress and develop further than occasionally feeling inadequate. It's a very, very inspiring thing. Anyway, so I played these pieces. I knew I wanted to learn jazz. So while I was at college, I was trying to learn it from books. I had this Ted Green book. I was going through that every day, looking at the scales and melodies that you could use over these chords. I just wasn't making any headway with it. When I came to the end of my course, I realized that I need to be focused. I need to be in an environment where there are no distractions and that everybody's in the same place wanting to achieve the same things, and that is to become well-rounded musicians. So I went and studied at a conservatorium in Western Australia. Now, so this is where the Martin Taylor piece came to the rescue. So I arrived at the audition and there were 3 panelists. 2 of them were lecturers and one of them was the head of the jazz department. And they gave me a sheet of music to sight read. It was a standard. Although I had experienced sight reading from the classical training, this notation was a lot different to what I was used to. Obviously the rhythms were a little bit more intricate and syncopated. Even the font sort of put me off a little bit. So I struggled to sight read these melodies, this notation. They then asked me to identify intervals. So they sat at the piano, and one of the guys sat at the piano and played intervals and said, can you tell me what this is? And then the ascending and then the descending one. And I had no idea. Then played some chords, that kind of sounded jazz-like chords. I couldn't identify them just by listening. So I had completely flunked those 3 tests that they gave me. And at this point, I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to get in. However, I had this prepared piece. They can't take that away from me, the Martin Taylor piece that I'd learned on the guitar. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to fail this, I'm going to do my best and try to impress them with this piece that I've learned. And they said, okay, so if you'd like now to play your prepared piece. So I sat down with my guitar and I played They Can't Take That Away From Me all the way through. After I'd finished the piece, I looked over to the panelists and I saw 1 or 2 of them with their, a couple of raised eyebrows. I think I impressed them with the piece. And they asked me a few more questions, then that was it. And I didn't hear from them for maybe a month or 2. And I got a letter saying that I had passed the audition and I would be starting, at the beginning of the term. They had an associate diploma in jazz and a bachelor degree in jazz, so it seemed quite serious. You would go there and you would spend a few years learning this music. And so I was very, very happy. And it was from my experience, from my studies at this conservatorium that I became the musician I wanted to become. I had sort of progressed and developed exponentially. I was so grateful that I got in. And I only got in because of that Martin Taylor piece. If I hadn't played that Martin Taylor piece, I wouldn't have got in. And then I would have had to prepare for another year. But I know that if I had prepared for another year, I would have got distracted and bored and maybe I wouldn't have studied jazz at all. So I was really glad to get in there. So this is why I'm very grateful to Martin Taylor, not only for being an inspirational musician, but also for helping me get into the conservatorium. Anyway, about a year after, he came over to Australia. He did a gig at our local jazz club. It was called the Hyde Park Hotel, and they used to have jazz nights there. I remember meeting him at the gig. Our jazz history lecturer was there, Murray Wilkins. When I was at the club, they were rehearsing, and Murray Wilkins, I never forget, introduced me to Martin Taylor and said, Martin, this is one of our students. His name's Janan Hanspal, and he's a Welsh Indian. And so I shook Martin's hand, and I didn't get a chance to talk to him much because it was a bit busy there. But the gig was fantastic, needless to say, and it was just a great opportunity to see him live, because I'd heard him play on recordings, but actually see it. Now, this technique of playing the bass line chords and the melody at the same time is such a cool thing. Now, I know Joe Pass did it years before Taylor. And I really like listening to Pass, but Taylor seems to have refined it. He's taken it to the next level. Not only that, I love his sound. Martin Taylor's got this fantastic guitar sound when he's playing, as a solo guitarist. There are a few techniques that you can do to achieve this when you're in the studio. I've done it myself on my own recordings, and it's nothing revelatory. It's quite standard. Is you plug the guitar direct into an amp or direct into a preamp, and then have a microphone placed near the guitar so it picks up the sound of the body, the body resonating, the reverberations in the room where you're recording. So some people put a mic near the 12th, 14th fret, and then another mic near the tailpiece here. There's many configurations, and it obviously depends on your own situation, how the distance you are, the room. There's a lot of factors to consider. But when you listen to his recordings, you can hear that sparkle. You can hear the sound of the body of the guitar, as well as the direct signal. So you're getting best of both worlds. And another thing I noticed with some of Martin Taylor's recordings is that you can hear the bass line coming out of the left speaker and the chords and melodies coming out of the right. So you get this stereo spectrum. So I'm going to show you the basic concept of playing the bass line chords and the melody at the same time by performing parts from They Can't Take That Away From Me. I would suggest, obviously, Martin Taylor's got his own online guitar lessons. He's got his own YouTube channel, so obviously you need to check that out. But the basic technique in They Can't Take That Away From Me, the way I learned it, was to just focus on the bass line first. Get that down, go back, and then listen to the chords or the melody. And the melody on top. You put them together. Sounds really cool. And it's just alternating between the bass notes and the melody, finding little gaps where you can play the melody in between the bass notes. At the time I learned it, as I said, by rote. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just shapes, and that was it. And now I understand it, and I go back and I see the way he's reharmonized the chords, the changes, the way they lead into the next series of chords. It's so creative and inventive. Things like that bit there. You know, approaching the 5 from a semitone above. You know, B flat of the 5 of the 1, which is E flat. You're playing the B11 down to the B flat 11, and then to the 1. Again, up to a semitone above the root note. And that change there. Brilliant. In a way, this video is dedicated to Martin Taylor. It's an opportunity for me to show my appreciation for the inspiration and wonderment that Martin Taylor has provided over my years of playing. And thanks to his incredible rendition of They Can't Take That Away From Me, I managed to get into the conservatorium. Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you for watching.